I just introduced myself to you in Navajo. I let you know my name is Brenda Beyal, and I am born. I'm born into the Saul clan and born for the Tamarind House people. And then I let you know about my paternal and maternal grandparents and let you know that that's the woman that I am. I am so excited and honored to be able to help 3 fabulous young women today who have worked on their capstone project, and I feel like are doing it the right way. Meaning that they reached out to Indigenous voices, and we're always about looking for authenticity and accuracy in everything that they did. This is their capstone project. They are graduating this spring in environmental science and sustainability, and this is under the direction of Ben Abbott. And I just think you know how to pick those women who are going to make a difference in this world. I see them as change agents already. So tonight, this is the forum on traditional ecological knowledge, and we would like to welcome everyone here. As in traditional ways of doing things, we would love for you, whether you do it just with your eyes or with your hands, to look around and just see everyone that's here. To acknowledge that there are people here, that you might know some of them, but let's bring the sense of community and the sense of, maybe in Navajo it's called relationship into this room. So take a moment and just look around and see everyone. And if you want to say hello to someone, go ahead and do it. Okay, thank you very much. Before we begin, I'm going to share with you a URL where you can post questions that you may have as you listen to the speakers. They can be questions or thoughts. I want to let you know that no question is too small and no question isn't enough. All questions are enough and all questions are for learning. And so here is the URL. It's POLLEV.com/Utah Lake 755. And I will try to share that again. But open it up, look and see if this is, maybe we'd love to have you share your comments with us. So to start, we would like to have Cheyenne Elton, who is a member of the Tribe of Many Feathers, and she is Miss Indian BYU, and we'd love to have her come up and give a land acknowledgement, and then we'll have an opening prayer by another member of the Tribe of Many Feathers, and Naomi has asked that person to come up after Cheyenne.
Yat Aisha Aisha and Altaninisha, Tabahanisha, Canada Bashishin, Bilagan Bashiche, Canada Bashinala. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cheyenne Elton. I am the current Miss Indian BYU Tribe of Many Feathers, and I am honored to give the land acknowledgement today. So a land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes the Indigenous people of that land. And furthermore, it highlights the existing ties that Native people have to the land as the rightful stewards. It's a custom that dates back centuries and is to remind others that this land was given to us by the Creator and that we have a responsibility to respect it and take care of it. Brigham Young University sits on the ancestral Indigenous homelands of the Goshu tribe and the Timpanowach-Timpanogos bands of the Ute Indian tribe of Utah. We express this land acknowledgement as a way to honor the peoples who come before us and acknowledge the great value Native American peoples have provided and continue to provide in our university community through the years and today. And to be reminded that the rich cultural history of what we now call Utah County. Ahia'e.
Sorry, I'm not actually a member of the Tribe of Many Feathers, but I will be saying the opening prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to gather here tonight. We are so grateful for the friendship and the relationships that we have. Heavenly Father, we are so thankful for the honored guests that we have here tonight. Please bless that we will be able to have our hearts open, that we can love each other and that we can love this beautiful earth that Thou hast given us. Heavenly Father, please bless that we can all be inspired and that we will be moved to action. And we love Thee so much and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. We are now going to be, this is exciting, we're going to have Kelina from Living Legends do a spoken introduction and then the hoop dance for us. Kelina.
Nochak Memohash. Hi, I am Kelina Anderson. I come from the Squamish Tribe Salish Nation in British Columbia, Canada. I am from Spanish Fork, so real exotic, real far, just right there. But a little bit about the hoop dance. I've been doing hoops since I was about 6 years old, but if you ask my dad, I've been stealing his hoops since I was a baby. My dad taught me the hoop dance. He learned it when he was here at BYU, performing with Living Legends. And then he taught me and the rest of my brothers. And hoop dance is really, really special, not only to my family, but to the Indigenous community. It brings a lot of healing and it brings a lot of who we are and giving thanks to not only Heavenly Father, but Mother Earth and all of her creations as well. And so the hoop dance is a storytelling dance. One thing about Native American people is that we tell stories. We love to express who we are, especially through our dancing, and we share that in the hoop dance by sharing the story of a little boy learning about nature. That's the story that I grew up hearing about when it came to hoop dance. I learned about a young boy who loved nature so much that he wanted the creatures to live on forever. And so a wise elder told him, if you make a hoop out of reed, and you dance with them, and you make these animals, then they will live on forever. Because a hoop has no end and no beginning. It is about eternity. And it is also a saying that if you put yourself through a hoop once, you add another year to your life. So I might be here for a long time, because I've been doing this for a while. But I love the hoop dance. I love feeling connected to Mother Earth as I'm dancing. It used to be traditionally starting with 5, and then as time got on, it grew and grew and grew, and so many people started dancing with 16 to 21 hoops and so forth and so on. And so there are now competitions to do hoop dance. There's contemporary styles, there are traditional styles, and it is just a wide variety of many people coming together to celebrate Mother Earth and to dance. So, yeah.
And I think, Kelina, you want to invite people to just express themselves vocally and be excited about what you're doing. The more energy we give her, the more powerful she feels with the hoop. And so you're welcome to hoop or clap if there's something that you like. Woo! think she ought to get a pass on at least one of her finals just for being. So tonight we are going to be hearing from elders from different tribes here, from some of the tribal nations, sovereign nations here in Utah. And there is such a thing as traditional ecological knowledge. And I would like you tonight to think about braids that maybe you see some people wear. I see some people wearing braids right now. And there's usually 3 strands. Tonight I want you to think about how you can braid the ecological knowledge, traditional indigenous ecological knowledge, with your own scientific or factual understanding of the earth and your core beliefs. And with your core beliefs, just think about what kind of activism you would like to see within your life as you braid these 3 different parts together. Now, to help you with this braiding, you obviously already come full of knowledge. You're not coming as empty vessels. I came today in rain, and then snow, and then sunshine. And so I have a belief system about the earth. I also have my own belief system on how we should live on the earth. And now I'm ready to hear some more information, so I continue my braiding. Like you already have things that you can braid. We're offering you one more strand tonight on how to braid your life, and as we look to sustainability and as we look to preserving or even healing this earth that we live on. So our very first speaker is going to be Mary Murdock. And I forgot where did I put my folder? I'm sorry. Is it up on top there? I was so prepared. Thank you, Naomi. Oh, you want all 3 of them to sit up here? Okay. So we're going to invite Darren and Mary up here. We're going to start with Mary Murdock Meyer. She is the great-great-great-granddaughter of Chief Walkara on her mother's side and Chief Araping on her father's side. She is the chief executive of the Timpanogos Nation, the original inhabitants of what is now Utah Valley and much of central Utah. So Mary, we'd like to invite you up. Do we want to have Darren come up also, or should we just have Mary first?
Yeah, we're just going to have them all sit.
Okay, Darren, you're invited to come. We'd like you to also, I'm going to share the URL again for you to actually, if you want to post questions, it's POLLEV.com/Utah Lake 755.
Hello, everybody. The way we introduce ourselves in our culture is to start with who I am. My name's Mary Murdock Meyer. My father is Colin Murdock. His parents were Lula Harris and Glenn Murdock. Their parents Glenn Murdock's parents were Frank and Estelle Murdock, and Frank was the daughter of Pernetta Murdock. Pernetta is the daughter of Chief Aropine. Her life story, which I'll get into in a minute, but that's how we introduce each other. And that way, say you're a young person and you learn these names of everybody when they introduce, then as you get older, if you don't know the parent, maybe you know the grandparent or the great-great-grandparent. And that way everybody knows how they're connected. As far as ecological knowledge, I want to share with you years ago when our people lived out here. We lived what would be called today biodegradable. Everything that we used, when we were done with it, went back to nurture the earth. When we went hunting, it was something, it wasn't a sport. And what it was is the way you fed your family, not only feed them, but the animal provided so much more. So when you went out hunting, you prayed, and an animal would sacrifice itself to you. In that, when you take that life, it's a sacred thing. So you pray for that animal, and you thank him for giving his life so that you could live. And then nothing was wasted. The hides became clothing or housing. And the meat was dried and preserved for winter or cooked in stews or soups to be eaten. Every part of the body, the intestines, the bladder. The bladder is a very strong organ. So it was used to carry water and sometimes used to boil stews or whatever. Everything was used. And anything that was left behind after you've taken your animal and you've gotten everything went to feed other animals or go back to nurture the earth. So when you took the hides home, you made your housing or your clothing out of it, and when you were done with that, it went back to nurture the earth. So trash and all the damage caused is a new concept for Native Americans, because everything we did was biodegradable. That's how we lived. And in order to help the planet, each one of us here needs to stop and think, what am I doing? Am I helping or hindering? How can I protect the planet? That's our mother that gives us life. The plants that grow, the trees, everything that comes from the earth, we utilize. There's medicines out there. There's teas, there's foods. All kinds of things that are usable that are now called weeds and dug up and tore up and asphalt put in their place. So I know we can't go back to the way things were, but as individuals, we can look at the fact of what am I myself doing? If I have trash, what can I do with it? What needs to happen? And work toward that with your science people, with your other people that are looking to help the environment and help the planet. and come up with ways. Youth is a beautiful thing because your minds are fresh, you're learning. It's the best time. And your ideas aren't stagnated with years of trauma. So you have fresh ideas that you can share with your instructors, with your teachers, and with your fellow man of simple little things we can do. Everybody can help in one way or another. Now, our people lived here a long time ago, and a lot of you probably have never heard of the Timpanogos before. The reason is because we suffered what I would call a genocide, a mass annihilation of our people. And our remnant was moved to the Uinta Valley Reservation. Out of 70,000 in our tribe, we were the largest tribe in Utah. Out of 70,000, only 500 Timpanogos Indians survived. And after we were moved, 300 of them died from smallpox. And so there isn't very many of us. And a lot of people think we're extinct, but we're not. We managed to survive it. And one way, even though there was the genocide, there was also the loving nature of the women from the pioneers. My grandmother Pernetta, that I spoke of earlier, Aropine's daughter, she was a survivor of the Fort Utah battle. And she was taken by Joseph Stacy Murdock, who ended up being the first Mormon bishop in Heber. He was also one of Brigham Young's right-hand men. He took her from that battle, and his first wife could not have children. Her name was Eunice, and she could not have any children. And so she took in Pernetta and another little boy. His name, they called him Pig. I'm not sure what he was trying to say. He kept saying spigot, spigot, and so they called him Pig. And they raised them, and that's where I come through that line. And because there were women that were willing to take in the children that were left from these battles, we survived. So even though there were hard times back then, and there was a lot of devastation, there was also blessings. In life, it's that way. There's good and there's bad. And what we choose to dwell on depends on what's in here. Because what's in your heart is where it all comes from. Our people were people of prayer. Petudama Apet, which means our Father. Nanasunga Ai. That's great, powerful mystery. Our people were prayerful people, and that's why we survived. Through prayer and our ancestors being quiet about who they were for a long time. Because there is still an extermination order out on us. However, that's illegal now under the new laws. But in that, our people have our tribal people, have chosen not to hold animosities and not to be angry, but to look to the future. Because we can dwell on the past and what happened and all be miserable and hate each other. Or we can recognize that there was trauma, it was bad, but what can we learn from it? And how can we better communicate with each other? How can we unify? Race wars and this type of thing that are going on all across the country are horrifying. I live in an area that is very prejudicial still to this day. So that's one reason why we've stepped out and we're trying to bring acknowledgement to who we are. And that we're human beings too. And in that, we all have to work together. We all bleed the same. We are all connected. That's what the medicine wheel you see a lot in Indian symbols and stuff. They have the medicine wheel that's showing the black, the white, the red, the yellow in a circle like the hoop. It has no end. We're all one. We're all connected. Mitaku yeo yajin is what the Sioux say, which means we are all one. So, in that, we need to all be one with our mother, the earth, and be respectful. I spoke at Earth Day a while back, and I was telling the people that even the rocks have life in them. They're the oldest, they're storytellers. They're old, they have all the knowledge. And you have trees that are coming up, you have all these plants, everything has life in it. Well, there was this little girl, she's only about this tall, and she listened very carefully to what I was saying. And she went out and gathered up a handful of rocks. And she made sure that every single person had a rock before they left. And I thought that was really something that she listened. Not only did she listen, but she heard what I said. And so I carry that rock with me. It's in my car. Because she made sure I had one too. But as far as knowledge for what we need to do, we need to stand together, we need to work together, and we need to protect this earth. We only have one planet. Some people are thinking of maybe we better go to another one, but this is the only one we've got. And unless you got millions of dollars, you can't afford a spaceship. So we need to work together to protect what we have here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mary, for those words of wisdom and knowledge that have been passed down from generations, helping us to know that the Timpanogos people are still alive. I work with Native American, 8 sovereign nations here in Utah, and as we go to each of these nations, and we ask them, what would you like the children of Utah to know about your people, your ways? The number one answer, which I don't think that a lot of people would guess, is they say, teach them that we are still here. And every sovereign nation has said that. We're still here. We're still surviving. Some of us thriving, but some of us are, continuing to move forward. And so I'm excited that these Naomi and Eloise and Hannah have invited elders to come. So this next speaker is Darren Parry. Darren is the former chairman of the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation. Darren serves on the Utah Humanities and the PBS Utah Board of Directors. He attended the University of Utah and Weber State University and received a degree in secondary education. Darren is the author of The Bear River Massacre, A Shoshone History, and teaches Native American history at Utah State University. He lectures across the country on Native American issues surrounding history and Indigenous views related to sustainability. He recently gave a lecture at the University of Copenhagen and spoke about Indigenous views to climate and environment. His passions in life are his wife Melody, 7 children, and 17 grandchildren. What's the other, is there another lucky 7? Like 7 great-great-grandchildren?
That's why I speak every day, so I'm not home.
His other passion is his tribal family. He wants to make sure that those who have gone before him are not forgotten.
Let me see something really quick. I would rather use this other microphone. Can you hear me okay there?
Yeah.
I've never introduced myself the way Mary did, with family. But my gosh, what a good idea. You need to know my family. My name's Darren Parry. I'm the former chairman of the Shoshone Nation. I stepped down as being chairman to run for Congress a couple of years ago. I lost my mind and ran for Congress. And as a Democrat, you know how that went for me. So. My father was Bruce Parry. I guess his claim to fame is he was the director of Indian Affairs for the state of Utah for a number of years. His mother was my hero, May Timbimbu. She was our tribal historian, our knowledge holder. Man, I loved her. Her father was Moroni Timbimbu, one of 10 boys. He was the first Lamanite bishop in the modern day church as we know it. His father was Dabuzi, or Jaeger, after his baptism. Jaeger was 13 years old during the Bear River Massacre and survived by playing dead. And Jaeger's father was Chief Sagwitch, chief of the Shoshone Nation. So I think I come from a pretty cool family. I want you to know that I wake up, I live in Cache Valley today, South End, Avon, Porcupine Reservoir. It's the most beautiful place in the world. It reminds me every day to be thankful for the teachings of my people and the blessings that I have. The land that we live on, as Mary said, is sacred. My people called it home for centuries. You see, there's a great natural order to the universe, of which man is an integral part. We have been entrusted with the responsibility to take care of this earth so that she will continue to reproduce for generations yet to come. I believe that ancient tribal cultures have important lessons to teach the rest of the world about how all things are connected, and the fact that our very existence is dependent upon the natural world that we seem to be destroying. Mother Earth is crying. We need to be better. My Shoshone people are indigenous to this land. We were hunters and gatherers. We traveled with the changing seasons. We looked upon the earth as not just a place to live, but something so sacred and special that we called her mother. She was always the provider of our livelihoods. You see, to Native people, the mountains and the streams and the plains stand forever, and seasons walk around annually. We traveled to different areas of this country when the seeds and berries were plentiful and the game was abundant. If you can imagine, it was a hard way of life. We were probably never more than a couple of days away from starvation, but it was a happy life. I believe back then, which is different from today, every member of the tribe played an important role in its survival. That communal relationship was sacred because we had no concept of personal property. We all looked at each other as equals, making sure that everyone's needs were met. There truly was no poor among us. By the mid-1800s, the Oregon and California trails brought thousands of pioneers and gold-seeking miners through the heart of Shoshone land. In 1847, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints began colonizing not only the Salt Lake Valley, but soon after lands north, where I live today, in the Cache Valley on the Utah-Idaho border. The delicate balance in which the Shoshone people managed food resources for thousands of years was drastically altered by colonization. In establishing their settlements, they plowed up the grasslands that provided precious seeds that were used as food source for not only the Shoshone people, but for the bison and the elk and the deer and other game. This lack of understanding between two cultures and the shortage of resources caused deep conflict over the land. As a contemporary Shoshone man said, the Shoshones welcomed the settlers and tried to be hospitable, but didn't realize what they had in mind. They retaliated when injustices were done to them, when their very survival was threatened, when their traditional way of life was made impossible. What else could they do? Historians have always had an easy time connecting the dots on what effect colonization had on indigenous communities across this country. But what has someone talked about is what effect colonization had upon food. Yet food was a principal weapon that was used by colonizers and settlers. How did this change the Shoshone way of life? What did the Shoshone people eat? And how did they navigate that delicate balance of a hunter-gatherer lifestyle in the face of colonial settlements? I have always believed that food weaves people together, connects families through generations, and is the life force of identity and social structure. I want other Native Americans to get to know their own food heritage. What did my ancestors eat before the Europeans arrived at this land? I see North America today as a whole, with vast and varied landscapes. I see deep connections to nature and to the ecosystems of indigenous groups. I desperately want to understand all of the plants and their purposes. No longer when I go on a hike in the Cache Valley do I see weeds, but plants that were used as food and medicine. I want to appreciate the purpose of everything in our natural world, to respect the plants and the animals, and as my grandmother always called them, our non-human kinfolk. As I look further into these things, I suddenly realized how grossly misrepresented Native American foods are today in America. We need to be able to have a clear vision of what we need to do next. In my mind's eye, I can see that long ago tribes were sovereign over this food system, maintaining food security through a rich knowledge of the land and its resources. They cultivated crops, they foraged wild foods, they hunted and fished as good stewards. They relied upon complex trading with other tribes. They held feasting ceremonies, harvested food from common sites. In order to understand this cuisine, we need to return back to the beginning and work solely with indigenous ingredients, using simple tools and basic techniques. And I'm doing that today in the Cache Valley with Shoshone food sovereignty. My grandmother would say, Darren, slow down, listen, and ponder the lessons that are being taught when you go on a hike in nature. There is a great natural order to the universe of which we are all a part. We have been endowed with the ability to observe, learn, and imitate this order. It's a relationship of giving and taking, what Robin Wall-Kimmer calls reciprocity. We know that the earth and all of its creations came into being by the Great Spirit as the designer and creator. We call it Dhamma Appa. The Great Spirit put into place finely tuned systems, cycles, and physical parameters that would always sustain life. We were always given careful instruction to take care of it. We were caretakers, not owners. And that's a distinction that needs to be understood in Western values today. We believe the lands have always belonged to the Creator and not to us. We've been instructed to not overuse the land and allow it to rest during certain times. The Creator expects us to sustainably manage the resources that we have, because we have been given and instructed to leave an inheritance for those yet to come. When I was a young boy, I always looked forward to a certain time in the summer when my grandmother would load me in the Oldsmobile, and we'd take that forever drive, which was about 45 minutes, to the Cache Valley from Davis County. As the car came to a stop, we would get out and she would go to the trunk and pull out this old woven willow basket that had been stained purple. She then told me that we were there to harvest choke cherries, something that her people had done for thousands of years, always in the same place and at the same time. She taught me what signs to look for when the berries were ripe. After offering a prayer to the Creator, then to Mother Earth, and then a prayer to the berries themselves, we began picking those berries with such care that we wouldn't even harm a leaf on a tree. She taught me the importance of sharing those berries with those in need, or with those who could not make it to the mountain that day. And she taught me the importance of storing those berries for future use. As I think back on that experience, I think our life's experiences are somewhat like gathering those choke cherries. With your willow baskets firmly at your side, are you gathering what your parents and friends and teachers here at BYU and others have taught you? I hope you're gathering these life experiences and putting them in your basket. I hope you've been attentive. I hope you've listened with all your mind and soul. I'm sure that at different times it was hard work, but with great care, I want you to take those berries of knowledge and experiences and place them in your basket, and I want you to cherish them. And then one day, when someone in your life that you care for is in need, someone who is facing a challenge, needs a little nourishment or encouragement, what are you going to do? What choices will you make to help them? How will you choose to use your berries of knowledge? I hope you'll pull out those berries of knowledge and use them for someone that needs them. Use those berries. Cherish the experiences and lessons of life that you're being taught today, even from those people who are unkind. And show gratitude for the people that made this possible. You know, the first Europeans that arrived to this land must have thought that the well, fertile, maintained lands just happened to be. The land was not untouched or wild, as some have recorded. They knew that native people lived within this environment, but didn't give them much credit for their skills and knowledge. They seemed to miss the highly complex indigenous land management techniques that have been practiced for thousands of years. Practices that have allowed those choke cherries to still thrive today. And I still gather them today. In the late 1800s, John Muir said that the Indians walked softly and hurt the landscape hardly more than a bird or squirrel. And as a result, the land the Europeans first arrived to was rich and fertile, organized and well tended. Our people never struggled against nature. They always worked within a set bounds and out of a spirit of respect. We took no more than we could use and used all that we could from what we took. Making sure that we put the time and energy back into the earth and land so that it would continue to yield for generations to come. As Mary said, our people have reverence for this land. We honor the sacred land of our ancestors and our spiritual path. We honor their resiliency and the way that we have survived and continue to thrive and adapt. And we seek reconciliation with you. We honor truth-telling, and we are committed to having honorable relationships with you. We have always believed, as you should, that the Great Spirit put everything on this earth for our survival. Nature needs to be tended and carefully and lovingly maintained. The natural resources on this earth will continue to produce year after year, but only when our steps are light and our hearts are right. Native people possess a profound spiritual kinship with nature. Pre-Columbus America was still our first Eden. Native people were transparent in this ecosphere. All of our decisions considered the effects of our actions on generations to come. We do not live in that space anymore. Colonization has taken its toll. But we need to start, not only for the sake of our children, but our grandchildren and those generations yet unborn. Yet in spite of all these challenges, we continue to thrive and adapt. We've had a history as Native peoples that has contributed significantly to not just the United States, but to the world. But I would dare say that we tend to get overlooked in many ways. And when we're not overlooked, we tend to get misrepresented. My Native people have been reduced to one-dimensional characters at times, important only in the sense that we taught the pilgrims to grow corn. But we're much more than that. We long to be heard and recognized. Our voices have been quiet for some time. We're still searching for that identity. America's history, as told from the oppressed, is a very different history than the one that we've been fed. Indigenous people have lived a history that has been either covered up or ignored. A giant bandage with the word "get over it" scrawled upon the top. But I keep telling my brothers and sisters that we need to keep opening ourselves up. Keep removing those bandages that reveal wounds that many of our people have suffered for generations. And we've got to start making decisions that will allow us to heal, which will allow us to heal as a country. I believe that the most successful Native Americans today are those who can best balance culture and change. We honor our culture. We honor those who went before. We honor them in their traditions. But we realize that we live in an ever-changing world. And it's my job as a tribal leader to make sure that they're prepared to change and succeed with it. How do we begin to address issues of cultural and environmental injustices that are taking place and are still taking place? Environmental justice affirms the sacredness of Mother Earth, ecological unity and interdependency of all species, and the right to be free from destruction. Environmental justice demands that public policy be based on mutual respect and justice for all peoples, free from any form of discrimination or bias. And whatever we do, we need to make sure our efforts are sustainable and inclusive. We do this when we give marginalized people a voice, a seat at the decision-making table. But not just people. As Robin Wall Kimmerer said, it's not enough to know the names of the plants. We need to know their songs. I'm telling you, my grandmother knew their songs. Before I close, I want you to know that in 2018, we were able to purchase 700 acres of the Bear River Massacre site, where those bodies still lie today. One part of the process that I wanted to do, I wanted to tell the story of the people. But equally as important as to tell the story of the people is to tell the story of the land. My first visit the next day after we closed on the land was to Utah State University, to the science community. There I met two professors. I told them my goal was to restore the land to what it looked like in 1863, using my grandmother's plant diary as a guide. I knew that I didn't possess the skill set to make that decision, but I knew that they knew. Our first interaction, more than 4 years ago, has brought us where we are today. Is the project doable? Absolutely. We've raised $7 million for land restoration only. Some of what we're doing is going to require buy-in from neighbors upstream. How will they feel about changing their farming techniques that they've been doing for decades? How will they feel about the reintroduction of beaver into the ecosystem? Can they see the benefit of doing things in an environmentally friendlier way as opposed to the ways they've been doing them for decades? As one rancher told a grad student, speaking about me and our project, you know, those Shoshones don't understand our community because they're really outsiders. Really? And lastly, accomplishing our goals at the massacre site will require ongoing funding for decades to come. Robin Wall Kimmerer said, she describes a new way of thinking about how to conduct collaborative science. In her book, she talks about bringing sweetgrass. You can't do it alone. And Brenda alluded to that. It takes relationships. Relationships between people, plants, and water to begin the process to heal our environment. I'm grateful for the teachings of my people. I'm grateful for my grandmother and the things that she wrote down. What we're doing at Bear River will not only symbolically, but literally have an impact on not only the Bear River, but on saving the future of the Great Salt Lake. Because we're putting more and cleaner water back into that ecosystem. As we speak today, members of the Conservation Corps are taking out Russian olives. We have 500,000 of them to take out. And they're about half done. This spring, we'll start planting 250,000 cottonwoods and willows. We're rechanneling Beaver Creek back into its original channel. With the reintroduction of beaver, we'll clean up the water to reintroduce the Bonneville cutthroat trout. Working with scientists, communities, and others has allowed us to do things that we never thought possible. Our best partner in this whole thing is the beaver, though. We hope to collaborate And we hope our collaboration efforts will make that place a living, learning classroom for decades to come. We're grateful for all of our partners that have contributed to this project. The reality, though, of finally being able to tell our story from our perspective is powerful. The purchase of the master site will allow our people to reconnect to this sacred space. Voices that have been quiet for a century and a half are now starting to be heard. Alliances are being formed between us and the science community. But as important as it is to tell the story of those people, it's equally as important to tell the story of the land. We're just now beginning to take back that narrative. One day a hunter brought home a sizable kill, far too much to be eaten by his family. A mountain man nearby asked the hunter, "How are you going to store the excess?" Because drying and storing techniques were well known at the time. The hunter looked at the mountain man puzzled and said, "Store the meat. Why would I do that?" Instead, the hunter sent out an invitation for the whole community to come together to enjoy a great feast. At the conclusion of that night, the mountain man was really bugged now. He again said to the hunter, "Given the uncertainty of fresh meat in the forest, it would have been smarter for you to share, to save the excess for your family, for future use." The hunter looked at the mountain man again and said, "Store the meat? I store the meat in the belly of my brother." That's who we are as a people. LDS people, Native peoples, coming together to steward and take care of each other, and steward and take care of this earth that we live on. We live in difficult times, but what brings me hope is that thousands of people are coming together to say that our human being is connected to the well-being of our environment. And the well-being of our environment is connected to the well-being of the climate. Health of the people will always parallel the health of the environment. I want you to know that we're all truly connected. And the actions that we take in the next decade will affect generations to come. So let's stay active, stay engaged, and keep coming together to protect and steward the environment and each other. We know what to do, right? We have the answers. Science has told us the answers. What we failed to do so far is to put values with knowledge. There's not enough science in the world that will overcome our selfish behaviors. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you, Mary. We are now going to have a question and answer period. I will go ahead and share the URL again. It is pollev.com/Utah Lake 755. Okay, so we have a couple of questions here, and one of you can choose to answer. One of the questions is, how do you wish that non-native residents of Utah Valley would behave and acknowledge native land rights and culture/traditions? Can you see that? There we go. Go ahead.
The first thing that needs to happen to recognize the culture and honor it is to recognize us as human beings. A lot of people still today don't do that. We're still looked down on as second-class citizens in a lot of forums. If we are to work together and help each other, and if you want to respect our cultures and learn our ways, then we have to be looked at as equals. We can't be looked at as, okay, you're less than me, from either side. We have to be looked at as equals, and then we have to recognize that we have differences, and that's okay. Every race, culture, and people have their own customs and their own ways and their own ways they do things, and that's good. We should learn from each other. If we learn from each other about these things, then we expand our own knowledge and we become a greater asset to the planet. When my father used to always say this, when you know everything, you have become useless. Because every day you should learn something new. And I always tell my kids that and remind them, it doesn't matter who it is, there's always room to learn. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. We have another question, which is, how can we better involve Indigenous leaders in discussion and legislation about sustainability? And I'm thinking, Darren, do you still have the little...
No, sorry.
Okay.
I broke it probably. So I've kind of gotten in trouble with the legislature and the governor. The governor sent out a tweet, and let me tell you, I'm on Twitter because my parents are not. And I can be a little more controversial on Twitter. I can say things on Twitter I would never say at Sunday dinner. And so the governor sent out a tweet a while ago saying, we just put together this task force with all the stakeholders that are going to tackle the Great Salt Lake issue. There's like 14 of them, farmers, ranchers, da-da-da. And I read the list and I thought, do you know who wasn't given a seat at the table? Indigenous people. We were not given a seat at the table. We managed the resource for thousands of years and didn't mess it up. And then I thought, my mind went back to the Colorado River Compact that was signed just over 100 years ago. The 7 states that occupy the Great Basin that use the Colorado River. They sent a representative to Bishop's Lodge in New Mexico. Herbert Hoover was the chair of the committee. The 7 people decided how they were going to divide up the Colorado River water. And they did. And they ended up giving out twice as much water that was there 100 years ago. Outside, 30 indigenous tribes were camped that made up the Colorado River Basin, who used the Colorado River. They were not given a seat at the table then, and we're still not today. But my question to you is, maybe, would the Colorado River look different today if we would have invited the tribes in 100 years ago? If we would have collaborated with tribal values and knowledge and stewardship towards the environment versus how we've used it as extraction, depletion to our benefit to make a profit? Would it have made a difference 100 years ago? I absolutely think it would have. And I think it'd make a difference today if we include Indigenous ways of thinking. Look, I don't have a magic bullet to save the Great Salt Lake, but I can interject values into the equation. Because values touch us here and not here. And when I said all the science in the world won't make up for selfish behaviors, we know the science, but why do we not act? What keeps us from doing it? It's selfish behaviors, including my own. So, those things have kind of got to change. And I hope our leaders, I think they're coming around. I don't know, the head of the Natural Resources Department saw me at the Stegner Symposium and said, we need to have a meeting and talk. I think he was tired of me bashing on him in social media. And I'm not a basher by any means, but I hope they got the point.
I want to add something to that. Would Indigenous voices have made a difference? I was at the Water Symposium a while back, and I asked one of the CUP guys, because they're concerned because we owe so much water right now to California and Nevada that we don't have. So I asked him, I said, well, what clause did you put in the CUP for drought years? See, if we would have added something. And he said, we didn't. That's one of the problems.
Okay, we have you have so many wonderful questions here. I'm going to take one that a lot of people want to know a little bit more about is, what can non-First Nations or Native American people do to support Native communities in environmental management?
I don't know, I think you're doing it today, you're showing up. This is a big deal that you would all come out and listen to an environmental talk from 2 tribal elders that are tired.
Yeah.
And so, the fact that... 3 tribal elders.
And one beautiful dancer.
Yes. The fact that you're here says a lot, but get involved with the tribal communities. I'm going to start a Shoshone Food Waste project in the Cache Valley. We're bringing back Shoshone food that's been gone forever. I brought my book over there for selling it. They're $10. And I didn't do it to sell the books really, but my grandmother's plant diary is in the book. And she hand drew these beautiful plants that are used as food and medicine. And then her handwritten notes are there, what that plant was used for to treat an illness. And so, I mean, the knowledge that's just in that book in the appendage of her plant knowledge is awesome. And what we're trying to do is just bring it back on a whole scale level to maybe even open a restaurant one day with those Shoshone foodways. To bring back that hyper clean, good food that our people lived on for thousands of years. And so, no grasshoppers or bugs. I draw a line at that. But I think showing up and supporting Indigenous communities and maybe making a phone call or an email. What can we do to support you? Do you have any projects coming up? Restoration projects. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities this spring at the Bear River Massacre site, 2 miles north of Preston, Idaho. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to support Indigenous groups, and there's a lot of land restoration projects going on all across the country that tribes are doing today. I just read a huge article on the Yurok tribe in California doing some river restoration to bring back the salmon. So there's things we can do.
I'm going to answer a question because you were talking about plant species, and there was a question here that says, can you tell us about a plant, either a species or an individual that you love? So I'm Danette, and I grew up on the Navajo Reservation, and in the summer we would go and harvest or gather Navajo tea. And when we gathered the tea, we would break it very close to the ground, but we would never pull the roots. And my mother and my aunts would always tell us that as we gathered this tea, to shake it so that the seeds would go back into the earth to regenerate. And if we didn't do that, then, you know, there was like, yeah, what are you doing? And which is, oh, brother, or oh, great, what are you doing? And then we take these and we fold them in on themselves, and you had to do this all in one day so that they would be able to be bundled up, and then you let them dry. And then in the winter time, you would drink this Navajo tea that was an anti-inflammatory tea, medicine. It was a calming tea, just like some of you drink lavender or chamomile. And it's actually green thread, and I think it grows here in this area. But that's one of my favorite plants that my family used. We have another question. It is, what can we as individuals do to build a better appreciation of and relationship with Mother Earth?
One thing I see a lot that really distresses me is you'll see a trash can sitting like right in the corner there, and trash all around the ground. We need to teach our young and maybe some of our elders, when you have a piece of garbage, take care of it. We were always taught, when you go to the mountains, go camping, whatever, when you leave, it should look better than it did when you got there. You don't leave trash laying around. And it is so frustrating no matter where you go. People have just gotten lazy, I think. Somebody else can pick it up and throw their trash. As individuals, we can be better than that. Make sure our trash goes in the trash can or the receptacle. And I would really like to see some recycling going on, but there isn't any of that too much around here. But that's one way you respect the earth, is to take care of things like that. And I wanted to share, because she's talking about the tea, for me it's cactus. And the reason being, when I was little, I fell on a cactus plant and had stickers all over in my hind end. And my grandmother picked them out one at a time while I was screaming and crying how much I hated that cactus. So when she was done doctoring me up, she made me take her to where I fell on that cactus plant. And she sat down and got her pocket knife out, and she picked the cactus and she peeled it, and we ate it. And she told me, never, ever hate something that has been given to you for nourishment. The cactus not only feeds you, but it gives you water. So that's a survival tip for all of you to always remember. Cactus are edible, and they don't taste that bad, and they can keep you alive if you're ever stranded. That and cedar berries. Cedar berries don't taste very good, but if you eat them, they will sustain you if you're lost somewhere. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, the Timpanogos were always lost. That's why they were eating that stuff. Look, if you don't have a respect for the earth, I don't know what I could tell you to develop it, other than my grandmother always referred to plants and rocks and water as kinfolk. Well, when I heard the term kinfolk, I think of relatives that I'm related to, that I love and have a respect for. And so growing up with that knowledge of looking at that as not just a plant, it's my kinfolk, I treated it differently. And so if you're struggling with having a hard time with coming to terms with nature and developing that respect, maybe start looking at that as We believe they all have spirits. And I think our religion kind of teaches us that too. And if you look at that in a different light now and change the paradigm a little bit, look at it differently, you tend to have a healthier respect for it. And you tend to take care of it just a little bit better than you would if you look at it as something that's disposable, something that we can use for extraction or depletion. So it's just changing the way we may look at the environment we live in.
I'm going to answer that question too. So, to appreciate and have a relationship with Mother Earth, go to her.
Yes.
Be in the woods. Be outdoors. Allow yourself to feel her peace and her healing. That's how you develop a relationship. To end, would you please hold your hand out? We are the five-fingered people. The thumb usually represents us. I want you to think of 4 people that you go to for security and love. It might be your mother. It may be your father. It may be your spouse. It may be a best friend. When you are tired and lonely and sick, these people hold you close and they hold you secure. Now hold your hand back out. So many times we stop there. But now, here you are. There is one other security that we have, and that is our Mother Earth. She gives us rain. She gives us soil. She gives us air, and she gives us plants and animals. And we are able to survive and be secure because of her also. Don't stop with the five-fingered people. Go to Mother Earth and remember that we have a reciprocal relationship with her, and that only until we join that reciprocity are we really going to be able to have our world and our mother with us for a long, long time in a pristine way. So thank you very much for coming and joining us. Could I please have Naomi and Eloise and Hannah come and stand up here? I think I speak for both Darren and Mary in saying thank you. Yeah. Thank you in joining and building a relationship with us and coming to us and looking at our lived experiences and our authentic narrative. What you heard today doesn't come from history books or from, Little House on the Prairie or some romanticized kind of book. It actually comes from our ancestors. And so thank you so much for allowing us to partner with you this day. So I don't know what we need to do now.
Now we need to eat.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so there will be snacks out in the hallway. I think that's the next big task.
All right. Can we handle that? Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks everyone, and sorry for the technical difficulties here. Thank you for attending a wonderful